Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tatiana Show. This is Tatiana. As you can imagine, I'm hosting my own show, but unfortunately, we don't have Josh again. He is a lazy bastard. No, just kidding. He's actually hanging out with Rick Volkroy, or whatever his last name is, the pirate party guy, who I got to meet. I don't remember where I met him, but he's really cool. At an Acapulco, and his girlfriend was really quite cool. So I'm glad that they're hanging out in Berlin. I got to say I'm a little jealous just because I love Berlin, but I'll be going there hopefully in August or September of this month, which should be really fun. We have two really good guests today, though, so I'm pretty excited. We have Arvin Vohra, who is joining us to tell us a little bit about his time in LP and his new method that he's come up with for education. And then we have Melissa Hubbard, who's going to tell us about Spanking City Hall, her book about how she beat down the mayor's office. Okay, that's sort of a paraphrase. It's a little bit over the top, but she's really, one of the founding members of the Tea Party movement in her state, and we're going to get a chance to talk about that, and all, of course, her career as a dominatrix, and that is a real thing. She actually was a dominatrix, which I think is hilarious and awesome and cool. So we might not talk about as much Liberty there, but anyway, we're going to start out with Arvin because he's got to leave us in just a little tiny while, which I'm kind of sad about, but we'll get a chance to talk to him quick. So Arvin, thank you for joining us and welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you for having me. Or thank you for coming. Hold on 1 second. I'm in my friend's house in the Hamptons and they decided to be doing drilling. I don't want to disturb our listeners. I was assured that there would be silence and I was lied to. That's it. I'm leaving this place. No, I'm just kidding. Great. So you and we met a while back, I think over at Freedom Fest in Las Vegas. I'm going to be going this year. Are you going?
I'm actually going to be at a different event at the same time, so I won't be able to attend this year, unfortunately.
Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that. I think it's one of my favorite events, and people, if they want to go, they can use Tatiana as the coupon code and they save $100 off the ticket. So tell me a little bit about how you got involved with the libertarian movement and a little bit about your background.
Sure. I got involved in the libertarian movement when I realized that if people like me did not get involved in politics, we were going to see bailouts and wars and welfares and government mismanaged education and government mismanaged healthcare essentially forever. So I took it upon myself to just get involved. I started out as a volunteer in the Libertarian Party office, just doing whatever needed to be done. I decided eventually to run for office, and currently I have the honor of serving as the vice chair of the party, where we work on national strategy and all that kind of stuff. Recently, a couple days ago, I announced that I will be running for the United States Senate here in Maryland.
Oh wow! Okay, I didn't realize you were in Maryland. For some reason, I thought you lived out in Nevada, but okay, that's exciting. Congratulations. Are you running on the libertarian ticket or are you running as a Republican?
No, I'll be running as a libertarian.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's ambitious. What do you think, not to put you on the spot, but do you think that there's something, I've seen everybody's getting all mad that Austin's running as a Republican. I'm not so offended. Are you offended as a member of the LP? What made you choose to ticket?
To go as a libertarian? It's an interesting question. It's something that I think that every candidate has to think about. And so the question to me was, what vehicle, what political party is going to be the most effective at bringing home the type of messaging that I want to bring home? There's a lot of people who are libertarians that have some libertarian ideas and some Republican ideas, or some libertarian ideas and some Democratic ideas. And that's fine. And I hold no ill will towards people who have, a mixture of political ideas, but I don't. I mean, I just don't really have a lot in common with either the Democratic view or the Republican view. And so I'm not really somebody that draws that, I'm not kind of overlapping both parties. It just wouldn't make any sense for me. So for me, the organization that had the messaging, that has the strategy, that has the principles that reflect my own is the Libertarian Party.
Yes. Well, it's certainly the best of all the parties by far. What do you think? How do you think the 2016 election went? I mean, it seemed like there was a lot of interest in the Libertarian Party. I think that, I mentioned this on the show last week, a little bit of disappointment with Gary this time around versus the other. And I actually thought, I was speaking with Travis Irvine, who's super cool. He has a book out right now. Not a book, a CD out right now, a comedy CD. And he was saying that, he had a lot of nice things to say about Gary. I personally also really like Gary, but there were some question marks about what happened with the campaign. How do you think that we did as an LP? Because at the same time, it was a record-breaking year, right? It was the most votes that we ever got.
One of the things that I've seen in politics is that people are much more critical when you start getting dangerously close to success. I think the Gary Johnson campaign is a perfect example. That is a record-shattering campaign. It is so far beyond anything else that the Libertarian Party has done in terms of presidential votes that it's an unmitigated and massive success, and that makes people nervous. There are a lot of people who like to play Liberty but don't really want to actually see it actually happen. I've seen something very similar with some of my own messaging. I've been talking about getting rid of public schools for 10 years, for a long time. And generally, the response that I get is occasional negativity, sometimes some positivity, but most people kind of ignore it. Now that we are in a situation where we are closer than ever before to getting rid of public schools completely, now that we're actually there, now that it actually might happen, all of a sudden a lot of people have decided that it is, unsound messaging or an impractical idea. And I think that they're saying that it's impractical specifically because it actually is practical now. It's actually a threat now. It actually might happen now. So when people start to criticize things that are by any possible measurement the biggest success we've ever had, I tend to not take it very seriously at all.
I don't know. I like the LP. I like having a third party. I didn't really believe in voting this time around, which is why I didn't. I was like, forget this nonsense. I'm out of here. I left country. I was like, you guys take it. I'm out. But 3% is still far, that's nowhere near where we could, end up. And arguably we had the two worst candidates. So what do you see is the direction for the Libertarian Party? Are you focused on a national level? Do you think that we're better served by doing a local effort? And does the LP do anything else other than run some candidates? Are there any other kind of engagements that they do with communities that you think are making headway?
We do, but the most effective thing that we do, by far the most effective thing that the LP does, is run big national level federal candidates. And here's why. Because you're right, those are the candidates who usually have the lowest chance of winning. But those are the campaigns that bring in the most people. Those are the campaigns that get the most attention. The Gary Johnson campaign didn't just bring in voters. It brought in state chairs, county chairs, local candidates, many of whom either have won or will almost certainly win very soon. It brought in so many of the volunteers and staff and donors that we depend on. So I would say that the most important thing that we do is run the federal candidates. The second most important thing we do is run the local candidates, the ones that win. Those are the people that are there. They can cut taxes. They can cut regulations. They can give special exemptions to every single person who asks them. They can refuse to play along with silly laws or regulations passed down by the state. There's a lot of things that those people can do once they get elected. So I would say those are the two most important things. Now, do we do other types of outreach? Of course, we do all kinds of outreach. But candidate outreach is, to me, without any question, the most effective form of outreach that is done not just in the LP, but actually anywhere in the Liberty movement. There is not a single person I've spoken to in my life who heard about, for example, Cato before they heard about the Libertarian Party. The Libertarian Party is, in my view, a gateway drug for the entire Libertarian movement. And so I think that the candidate focus is without question the strongest thing that we do.
Well, I appreciate that for sure. And that makes a lot of sense. I also liked the Our America initiative that they've been running. I really like the advocacy for, reform of the drug laws, changing the prison industrial complex up a little bit, shaking things around. But, let's talk a little bit about the education thing, because I think that, tell me, what is your Vohra method? Like, why do you care about education so much? How did you come to think about that stuff?
Sure. So I've been interested in education my entire life, and it's like one of those things that if you're really into education, then you start seeing all the problems with education. And I was in many ways a very ambitious and simultaneously dissatisfied student. And there were things that I saw happening in my own school, which was a very, it's a good school, it's a very prestigious school, that I just thought were silly. So over the years, I started working in private sector education. I started working in the small free market of education. I started first doing tutoring, and then I eventually started working with a different model of education, which is about individualizing education, but in a group setting. So it's affordable and it's also individualized. And what I've learned there is that in order to get the kind of educational excellence that can adapt as fast as culture changes, that can treat the needs that are constantly changing as students change. Students that grew up with social media, those are different than students that grew up without it. That can only be accomplished by a fast-moving free marketplace, which is why I'm so passionate about getting the government completely out of education. They're using methods that are broken, that are outdated, that are obsolete, things like Common Core that don't make any sense at all. And I believe that that is just hurting students with no gain to anybody except for maybe the textbook manufacturers. It's not even good for teachers, because the good teachers would be the ones who would be the most sought after in a free market. And so the really important focus to me is getting the government completely out of education. And that means getting rid of public schools, charters, any government funded vouchers. All of that needs to go and be replaced by a complete free market in education.
Sold. But how do we get other people to buy into that? Because I think when you start talking about this stuff, people get very nervous. Their sacred cow is education for everybody. And, if you look at the progress in terms of like grades and stuff, and then grades are like, bleh, and then they're like spending. So, from an objective perspective, anybody with like half a brain can tell that it's not working. But getting the mechanics of the state to all of a sudden be like, oh, wait, schools and kickbacks and whatever little scams they've got going on. How do you do that? Is it first on a state level? Is it on an individual level?
I think it requires, the first thing it requires, I was watching actually last night, I was watching The West Wing, and they had an episode that focused on school prayer. And that was the big debate. Now, here's the thing. Because of the work of the Liberty movement, we don't hear about that debate that often. Why? Because we've moved the debate to the next level. Our questions are, should we have government schools at all? How easy should homeschooling be? Our job, I believe, at this particular phase is to move that debate, to make the question not what should public schools do, but should public schools exist? The way to have that debate is to start talking about it in our candidates and with our campaigns, with the nonpartisan organizations. The sort of apologetic kind of voucher stuff, that is not going to get anything done. At a most basic level, I don't think it's just a very good idea. But on a more pragmatic level, it's not really calling into question that fundamental thing, which is, should there be government funding? I think the answer is no, but we're never going to have that conversation if we stay afraid of having that conversation.
Yeah, certainly. So what is this method that you've developed? Is it for elementary age students, or is it for college students, or how does that work?
Sure. So my particular method, and again, my method is just one of many methods in the free market. It's not the only good method in the world, but my personal method is based on the idea of everything being individualized and responsive. So in my classroom, if you make a mistake on a problem, you get a responsive worksheet that helps you analyze and understand that type of mistake. So if you're doing math and you do your addition wrong, then you're going to work on addition. And we have a system that allows all of our students to be working on something totally different, yet within a structured setting that many people like. And yet with that constant oversight, constant feedback from the instructors, it's kind of the same way in tutoring where your instructor's watching everything you do. We're able to do that in our group settings. The nice thing is it's a lot cheaper than tutoring, while it still gives you that type of thing. Now, here's what's important about it. Now, my method already exists. It's already known to work. But if a public school teacher wanted to use my method, they would not legally be allowed to. If a public school teacher wanted to use one of the other hundreds of excellent free market educational methods, Not allowed to. If they wanted to come up with their own method, a great own method, again, not allowed to. The problem with government schooling, in addition to the immoral way in which it's funded, is that it hamstrings the excellence of the people that are already there. Public school teachers, they're not morons. A lot of them have great ideas about education. In the free market, they would be able to use those ideas.
I think that's very exciting. Do people take the class online, or and again, I didn't get a clarification. Is it only for is it for under college or?
We work with students from about age 8 to even when they're taking the GRE and LSAT. We have a huge range. And because all of our students work independently of all other students, it actually works out pretty nicely. So it's not like there's one set level. Everybody's working at a separate pace. So we have a humongous range, and our innovation has allowed us to reach that.
Okay, so before I let you go, because I know you've got to go, but really quick, you've written some books. Do you want to tell everybody about them in case they want to learn a little bit more, no pun intended, about your thoughts on education?
Sure. I've written 4 nonfiction books. I think 4 books. The first book I ever wrote was called The Equation for Excellence, and it's a book about how to teach math. Some of my ideas have adapted since then, and some are pretty much the same as they've always been. It's interestingly, despite its entirely non-controversial nature, in my opinion, it's one of the most controversial things in terms of, the response that I've gotten. I've never really understood why. It seems like a harmless enough book, but gets a lot of blowback. I wrote a book called Lies, Damn Lies in College Admissions. That is actually has a lot of controversial content. The content actually got me blocked from the Tom Woods show just last week. Now that one makes sense that it's controversial. Because
why? Now I want to know. You're just dropping little nuggets for me to. Why did you get vote?
So one of the themes in the book is talking about the way that college degrees currently are functioning in a lot of ways the way indulgences functioned in the pre-Reformation Catholic Church. And so I explained how just like the Catholic Church would find out whatever the most you could pay was, and coincidentally, that's how much it costs for you, colleges do something very similar now where they look at your tax returns before they decide how much you need to pay for college. So, I talked about how that same thing, the degrees themselves, they're meaningless. Just like indulgences, we're meaningless. However, people believe that they need them. And so there's a lot of things like that really goes on. And so on one side, Tom Woods is a hardcore Catholic. He's a real strong believer in that, which I totally respect. But so there is that whole pre-Reformation stuff where I think he took a certain amount of issue. I think I can say that without revealing any consequences, but I think he took some issue with some of the content there. And then there was some other content where I talked about how just as religion has often been in the past misused in order to support authority, today education is often being misused to support authority. And again, I ended up kind of drawing some parallels between, not Catholicism specifically, but between Christianity, the way that it's presented versus the scriptural form, and showing that how something similar is happening with college education. And again, I think it's safe to say that the show took umbrage to some of that commentary. So anyway, that book is I understand why it's controversial. I can get why it's controversial. I've never understood why The Equation for Excellence is controversial. I also wrote a book called Why Hillary Lost, just about the campaign, just a strategic analysis of it.
Is that the whole book?
Yeah,
you just like show a picture of her bill and just say, really? Come on, guys.
And then very recently, I just came out with a new book. And it's called Materialistic Minimalism. It's, as far as I know, entirely uncontroversial. It's just a book on how to live a lifestyle that both embodies material excellence, but doesn't give you your real cluttered lifestyle. It's not really a political book. It's just a pragmatic book based on some things that I've been thinking about for a few years. I'm gonna kind of hope that it's not controversial, but given my luck, who knows?
Wait, so is this book about how I should clean out my closet and stop being a hoarder?
I mean, pretty much, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll put that one first on the top of the reading list. So if people want to kind of catch up with you, maybe get involved with the LP, read some of your work, maybe bring your educational method to their own children, where can they catch up with you?
Sure. My business website is vohramethod.com. My political website is votevohra.com. And if you want to get involved with the Libertarian Party, please go to lp.org.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on all your accomplishments. I'm impressed. I'm disappointed we're not going to hang out on Freedom Fest, but I'm sure there'll be another good libertarian event soon, and I'll see you then. So
Awesome.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks a lot.
Awesome. All right, guys. So next up, we're going to bring up Melissa Hubbard. But first, I want to tell you guys a few different random things. First of all, if you like my makeup, I did it with Beauty Counter. You can get a link below and you can pick it up. I don't know. I heard about this from Callie, Ross's sister, Ross Ulbricht's sister. Room doing her makeup, and now I'm addicted myself. So anyway, it's non-toxic and stuff like that, so I thought that was good. I didn't know that that stuff was so bad for you, but we'll have her on and she could talk about it at some point. I want to give a quick shout out to my sponsors, cryptocompare.com, get all your crypto news. We've got the bitcoincpa.com. Kirk is making my business life better and better, although I feel like I might be his worst client. Hopefully he won't throw me out of the program, because I think it's really great to sort of get rid of the disarray that you may find your bookkeeping in. Freeross.org, of course, they love donations, and Ross was just moved yesterday from his MCC in Brooklyn, so we'll have Lynn on soon to talk about where they moved Ross and what are the next steps. Thirdkey.solutions, a great company. Pamela Morgan is a good friend of mine, and also incredible on 20 different levels. So check out her company and see if you need further services if you're in the crypto business. Two of my favorite podcasts, Sovereign Tech and Sex and Science Hour. You got to listen to them. Also, Volturo, giving some love to Josh, even though he's not here. You can click on the link and get your gold and Bitcoin in and out. Very cool company, and I think the most legit of the ones that are doing that, not to detract from the others, but I just love Josh and his brother. I think they have a killer team. And of course, my company, Crypto Media Hub, if you guys need marketing or PR assistance, and of course, you can always get my record at TatianaMoroz.com. So now we're going to bring up Melissa Hubbard, and I'm excited to speak with her because she and I had met a while back, and she gave me a copy of her book called Spanking City Hall. And there was a woman with a riding crop or whatever you call that thing. And I was thinking, what in the freaking world is this about? So she's going to tell us. She's done a lot of other political stuff that she sort of picked up on along her journey. So I'm excited to speak with her. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Tatiana. It's great to see you again, actually.
Yeah, same here. Great to see you. I like your art in the background. This has been a very artsy show. I like it.
Yeah, I like the art. So,
cool. So for folks at home who are not familiar with you, do you want to give us a little bit of a quick background before we delve a little deeper?
Well, sure. My journey is actually really a spiritual one, and I really should always preface it that way, because God sometimes puts us in some weird places to get some weird things done. And the further I get away from my career as a dominatrix, which I did for 5 years, and it ended about 12 years ago. Okay, so it's been a while since I've done it. But the further I get away from it, the more I see exactly how God needed me in that role for a short time to learn some things and to get some tools that I didn't have before. The role also helped me reconcile some of my own personal issues with some sexual abuse that had happened to me when I was a very young girl. And anyway, so God, through a series of a lot of coincidences, when, you know, the universe just wasn't taking no for an answer, I found myself with a dungeon and having a business as a pro dominatrix. I didn't break any rules or anything like that, but I kind of ran afoul of women in the lifestyle. They didn't like my approach. I was kind of bending some of their rules.
What are the rules that you were bending? Sorry to interrupt, but now you lured me in. I'm like, what are you doing wrong?
For me, it was about, gosh, the nuances are so hard to explain, Tatiana. Let's just say that you could boil it down to this. I was a conservative, and most of the people in that lifestyle, in that world, are liberal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so you could kind of boil it down to cultural differences. But anyway, I kind of ran afoul of some of these people. They were, in my opinion, doing dangerous things that were egregious, and I would call them out on it. And consequently, I had a kind of a thriving business. I had clients that would see me, sometimes they came from Europe. I had one that came from Mexico, a couple times a year, and would specifically come to Indiana to see me because of the way I did things. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. These women outed me to the media. They figured out my home address, and this is early internet doxing, okay? This is doxing circa 2003, before there was Facebook, before there was Twitter. It was a different social media world back then. And this was via an AOL chat room. So they posted my public, or my home address where I live as a single woman in a chat room, and continue to post it. And then they had a pack of women write this crazy press release that I was dangerous and was hurting people and threatening their lives. And they sent it to all of the local media here in Indianapolis, as well as public officials. Yeah.
Wow, they seem like really awesome people.
Yeah, aren't they? But, that's what doxing is. So I experienced that. But that was also part of God's plan. This is the way this works out. It's just kind of fascinating. But so what happened was the media, most of it ignored me, except one TV station, and it was sweeps month in May. That's when they determine ratings for ad revenues. So the cops that investigated me, they knew I wasn't breaking any laws, and they told the media that, unbeknownst to me. But the media still knocked on my door. I talked to them, and then they ran this very sensationalized broadcast that they pimped with trailers for an entire week leading up to my outing in the media. So that happened in 2003. Because I wasn't breaking any laws, there were no consequences. It's just that I was outed in the media. It spooked all of my clients, and effectively I couldn't work for 6 months. So there was that. But what it taught me I didn't really know anything then about the media and how it worked. So I kind of had to learn. That gave me exposure to it. That's what God needed me to have at that time, was exposure to the media and how it works. Then 2 years later, due to a series of other events, I got on the mayor's radar big time. And the mayor was a Democrat. And they decided, even though they knew I wasn't breaking any laws and had sent a private investigator, or actually it was a vice cop on the city's payroll, to my place of business to first interview with me, and then 2 days later take a session, the cop relentlessly sexually harassed me. Even though I tried to turn down his session, he begged me to take it and told me he wanted to learn. Because I saw myself as a teacher, I felt obligated to take his session. So there was that. Anyway, 2 days later, he comes back for his session in, my dungeon, and he continues to sexually harass me. These are Democrats paying someone from the city of Indianapolis who works for the city to come into my place of business as a single woman with the sole purpose to sexually harass me relentlessly. Now, I don't begrudge the city investigating me. I think if they think there's something illegal going on with any business, that's within their purview. But when they knew and found out nothing was illegal going on, they not only continued to sexually harass me, but then they decided to persecute me publicly with a lawsuit. Now, have you ever heard of a zoning lawsuit? Because they couldn't get me on anything criminal. They went for zoning. And actually, I didn't break any zoning laws either. So have you ever heard of a zoning matter being handled with a downtown full court press conference, podium, stage, all the public officials, and I think we're the 12th or 14th largest city in the country. So there was the city attorneys, there was the chief of police, all of the law enforcement people, all of
very good use of tax dollars.
Right. And I think there was a helicopter overhead. Like they were all there. There were a couple hundred people at that press conference. And that is when the mayor announced to the city that they had filed lawsuit against me, a zoning lawsuit. A zoning lawsuit is, it's not criminal. It's a fine, like a parking ticket. So I decided rather than to let them walk all over me, or anyone else that ever decided to do anything like that, that I was going to fight them. But I didn't know anything about City Hall. So I didn't know anything about politics. I barely knew anything about media at that time, but I figured it out. The first thing, I did was I just started to study City Hall, and I hired a lawyer. Long story short, it took 20 months, but exactly almost 20 months from when that press conference happened, I had orchestrated the election upset that threw a two-term mayor out of office. He was outspent 30-1, and no one knew his opponent's name for months before the election. So you're sitting here in July, and a guy's going to run for mayor, and no one knows his name, and the election's in November. That's effectively where we were. And he was outspent 30-1. That was the year I founded the Tea Party. And when I say I founded the Tea Party, I did. There's no earlier reference to it. I didn't even myself know what one was. The way I had the idea for it was there was this really old guy in the crowd at the very first rally I threw. And I should kind of back up a little bit. The reason I threw rallies, I had, in my study of City Hall, I was looking for dirt to take the mayor out. I didn't know what that dirt was going to be. I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I had to try. And the only thing I could do at that point was learn everything I could about the city. So I was reading blogs about 20 to 30 hours a week. We had a lot of local lawyers that blogged on politics, surprisingly. They weren't really well-read blogs. Most people weren't aware of them, but I found them, and I would read every word they wrote. The most important words were the words in the comments. That's where the people that work in government would go and leave anonymous comments. I still believe today that that's where the word, the group anonymous comes from. They're just anonymous comments, but they were the whistleblowers who couldn't talk. So what I discovered was that there was this huge property tax problem happening in Indiana where no one would be able to pay their taxes. And
is that a bad thing? Isn't that
good? Well, when you're not able to pay your property taxes, that gives the government the authority to come and take your house. And I happen to live in an older historic neighborhood. There's a lot of elderly people that, they bought their houses long ago. Their houses are worth a lot of money today, but they can't afford a $1,000 a month property tax increase. No one can. And that's kind of like what looked like was going to happen. But meanwhile, and this is in 2007, so this is many years before we heard the word fake news. Meanwhile, the fake news on local television was saying that these property taxes weren't going to be any big deal, Tatiana. And I'm like, well, this isn't what the anonymous commenters on all these political blogs I've studied for months and months are saying. They're freaking out. They're saying that there's no way that the government's going to handle this thing. It's going to be completely botched. And in order to cover this tax deficit that they had, no one was going to be able to pay their property tax bills. So I had all this inside intel. I basically knew what was going on. I knew that my neighborhood, which is kind of, you know, an affluent historic neighborhood, was going to be heavily hit. So I had this wacky plan to get on my bicycle and ride house to house and warn my neighbors 2 days before their bills came. I knew what their bills were going to be because I'd looked them up. Nobody else knew their bills were going up sky high because they sat around and watched television and believed the fake news. So because I didn't believe fake news, I went and warned my neighbors. And I ended up gathering 500 neighbors on the 4th of July, 2007, in front of the governor's mansion, the same governor's mansion where Mike Pence lived in my neighborhood, for the first rally. And it was at that rally that there was this crusty old government-hating gentleman, we all know them, don't we, that said we need a tea party. And I didn't even know what a tea party was, but he kind of had me at the word party because I love to throw parties. And I'm like, you know what? All these people came. If they want a party, I'm going to throw them a tea party, whatever that is. So I ended up meeting up with some libertarians after that. We talked it over and decided how a tea party should look, and then we started hatching the plan. On July 28th, 2007 is when the country's first big televised tea party took place. And I have searched and searched. I cannot find an earlier reference of it, but that's when it happened. I didn't do this alone, but I kind of just, my role not even was policy. I basically did marketing, invites, networking. One of the things I did early on was I identified every group and blogger in town that was against the mayor, and I went and personally met them, and then I made sure that they met everybody else so that all of the bloggers in Indy knew each other. And then I just basically started patching together all of these kind of little independent coalitions that were before sort of operating in isolation, and I got everybody working together on the same page. And then I told them that, you know, I told them to remember that we're authored by our Constitution, by our founders, to be dominant over the government, and the government is authored to be our submissive. And when I said that to them, everybody's like eyes lit up. They got it. They're like, that's right. And I'm like, right. And if you don't act like the dominant, your submissive is going to get out of control. And everyone who's a parent understands that. If you let your kids run you, it's all over, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And so what I didn't understand at the time, and I didn't understand it until years later, what I was unwittingly doing was cultural activism. I basically then told my neighbors I was putting together kind of like scenes and skits, just like I did in the dungeon. I was just putting on scenes and acting. And I would make these things play out in the media. And the media couldn't help but watch because we were doing crazy things that most people wouldn't do, but they didn't hurt anyone, and we didn't ever break any laws. And we never left as much as a gum wrapper on the ground. And we always redressed our government peacefully. But because the things we did were hilarious and very clever, we were able to get a lot of media, even though they kind of didn't like us. And we were able to push this thing over the edge and cause the biggest election upset in our state's history, and the biggest one in the country that year, and did it inside of 4 months. Some of the antics that we pulled were amazing. For one, we did this thing, we called it Breakfast at Bart's. Bart was the name of the mayor that we took out, and it was a sensitive operation because we weren't going to be able to get 500 activists to go to the mayor's house. Most people wouldn't do that. You know, they would feel threatened, like they'd lose their job. In fact, that mayor tried to get me threatened for my job, which I still have today. And I know that because the CEO, my employer, told me so. But the way we got the people there, well, we only had 12 that were willing to go. Well, I knew I couldn't get 4 television stations and the newspaper of a major city to cover 12 activists. Think about that. So I had to kind of get a little wily. So what I did is I had people purposely leave comments on blogs that I knew that the media would follow, talking about a protest, but not saying where or when. So finally, the media couldn't stand it because they kept seeing secret protest everywhere. And they called me and they demanded to know where it was. And I said, you know, what protest? They're like, we know you're having a protest on Sunday. You need to give us details. And finally, I said, you know what? You call me at 7:30 in the morning and I will tell you where to be at 8 a.m. I gave them a half an hour's notice. And they were all there. Actually, I think they arrived about 1 or 2 minutes before we did. And basically,
but it was still just 12 of you guys?
12 activists, and we got all the television stations and the newspaper. Now, I did it on a Sunday, which I knew was a slow media day, you know, so I kind of planned these things. But one of the reasons I knew Trump was going to win the election, honestly, MAGA, Make America Great Again, all those activists were doing the exact same thing that we did in 2007, from networking everyone to, you know, cultural activism, you know, cartoons, memes, really engaging social media. It was really the exact same thing, only many times bigger. And it all started with not believing fake news. The whole fake news thing is in there as well, and harnessing social media. So it's really, and I didn't know nationally how it would ever play out and if it would ever go anywhere. But by golly, that little thing we did 10 years ago sparked into something. Now, locally, it's had a big impact. It drives the politicians crazy here because our activism caused the Indiana Constitution to be opened. And a 1% permanent cap put on property in the Constitution. They can never charge more than that. Now, a lot of libertarians will say, oh, we have to get rid of property tax altogether. It's illegal. I totally agree. Our movement pushed for repeal very hard. That was our position, repeal, for months and months and months. We would not budge from the position. And we were adamant about that. But here's the reality. The government uses your property to go to the bond bank to get money. It's collateral. Your property's collateral for them to go to the bond bank and get money. They're never going to let go of that. We had a very good governor at the time, the governor before Mike Pence, and he basically worked a deal and got that permanent cap put in the Constitution. So our property is stable in Indiana. That makes us a very interesting economic city for businesses to move to, because their executives and employees can have, you know, a low cost of living with taxes. I mean, I live in a gorgeous historic home and my property taxes are under $3,000 a year. You're on the East Coast. You can't comprehend. I saw your face.
Yeah, no, because I know that, you know, my parents pay at least, I think, $12,000 a year, something like that, which is insanity to me, that people are basically paying what rent costs over the course of a year, or a little less than rent, depending on where you are, just in taxes. It's insanity. What's the point of owning something?
I understand. I understand. It's the scariest thing when you get into a home, say you're a senior citizen and you've lived there 30 years. And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're taxed out of your home and you plan to live there and now you have nowhere that you can afford to live. So we did stabilize things here. So far, and I can't be 100% sure of the exact number, but this went into effect in 2010, and it saves roughly about $500 million a year for our homeowners. So there was an election upset and a huge money savings for our citizens. And this is like, you know, what can be accomplished from cultural activism. And honestly, it all started because, you know, some dominatrices outed me in the media, you know, and it went somewhere. And I want to take it back to the whole spiritual thing too. I saw and heard some things as a dominatrix. I walked in some dark circles, dark places. Like you wouldn't want to be there.
Why did you want to be there if they were so dark and miserable? You were just like working through some things on your own. But why would you willingly go into, I mean, yeah, okay, you slap around a couple guys, they're cool, but then you get the creeps and then it gets a little bit, I don't know. I mean, how do you keep your own soul from getting corrupted, right?
Yeah, well, now actually as clients, I didn't really have, I mean, maybe 2 or 3 creeps over the years. Basically, they were all pretty good, but I would charge $100 to do a screening interview days before their session. So I had control there. But it was when, after my first media outing, I thought I needed to get involved in the lifestyle because there's, you know, like parties and kinksters and events and things like that. And I thought that I probably would be smart to go and meet people so I had some backing and sense of community. That was a really, really bad idea. What I found in that exploration were, in that lifestyle, I don't really care for the people. Like, if you think politics is vicious, these people, it's not good, not good. But I would hear things with.
Hey guys, not sure if y'all can hear Melissa, but she cut out on my end. Oh, it looks like we may have lost Melissa. I don't know really why, but we'll get back in contact with her, hopefully, in just a second. She'll call back in. But Brian will give us a hand with that, which is cool. In the meantime, I can tell you guys about my upcoming shows. Leaving for Vegas in a couple weeks. I'll be doing 2 different panels at Freedom Fest, so that should be really exciting. I only got to do one last year, and Freedom Fest is a little difficult to get into, so I'm excited to do it, and we're going to do a quick pop-up concert. Again, if people want to go to Freedom Fest, Vegas is sort of a pricey city, but you can save $100 off of your seat, and if you use the coupon code Tatiana. After that, I'll be going down to Los Angeles just for fun, and then I'll be at Mises U. Hey, we've got Melissa back. Hey, Melissa.
Yeah, we had a. Anyway, where I'm going now is very sensitive, but.
We still have a poor connection on my end. I don't know if our listeners can listen. Can you maybe start that phrase over again?
Yeah, let's see if it's running a little smoother. Okay. And, well, we're going to try this one more time. And if it doesn't work, I'm not going to tell this story because this could be the universe saying, I don't want it out there yet. But we'll just give it one more shot, okay?
Go ahead.
Well, I was told by a very powerful dominatrix, and I'm not going to say who she is, but she told me about rescuing a young girl once from a cage in a closet. And she also told me about a human slave auction in Chicago.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty intense.
Well, with what we're learning right now about these pedophile trafficking, it all came back and made sense. I've known that the pedophiles were throughout government for a long time. I've just known. But I didn't understand there was this pedo-satanic aspect to it and just how deep the trafficking is going. Migrant children, immigrants, especially are vulnerable. Many of them are harvested for organs and their young blood, as well as sex rituals.
What's a sex switch roll? What is that?
Sex ritual.
Oh, sex rituals. Yeah, thumbs down on those. Got it.
Sex rituals. Now, are you familiar with Craig Sawyer at all, the Navy SEAL?
No, I don't. I don't know him.
Okay, well, Craig Sawyer is a Navy SEAL, and he is on several different TV shows. I don't watch television at all, so I haven't seen his shows, but I follow his Twitter account, and I've heard him on many interviews on the radio, or I mean on the internet interviews. And he's a SEAL, okay? I tend to trust Navy SEALs. If you can't trust a Navy SEAL, you've got a problem. Well, Craig and some of his friends have been pulling children out of these dungeons. And they are sometimes tortured purposely to adrenalize their blood right before they're killed, and then their blood is drained. Yeah, I know.
So how do you know? I'm not gonna, I've been following Pedogate, and that was one of the things that really made me less, I guess, like anti-Trump. Like I was not pro-Trump, I was kind of neutral, but the idea that we were sort of getting a little bit closer to that, as dark and as scary as that topic was, that was something that I thought really needed to be exposed. But how do we know, is it just people's like stories about it? Because when you hear about people doing satanic rituals and drinking blood, it sounds like retarded. It doesn't even sound like a real thing. But it seems, based on some of the WikiLeaks stuff, and then in general, like there's all this other information, that this is going on. Like how serious of a problem do you think that this is? I mean, other than it's obviously ridiculously immoral, like how widespread do you think that it is?
I think that there are tens of thousands. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, I can hear you.
I think that there's tens of thousands of covens of varying sizes in the United States, and they're all over the world. For instance, May 1st is one of the high satanic holidays. And it is the beginning of May 1st, 1776, is supposedly when the Illuminati was started. And this is one of the high holidays. Well, right here in Indianapolis, Indiana, the Department of Natural Resources was called out to come and look at these animals that had been slaughtered. And it was a goat, a lamb, and chickens. They had slaughtered a goat and just dumped the carcasses literally like 10 miles from my home. And the Department of Natural Resources put a picture of it on their Facebook page. I mean, I knew immediately what it was. The picture showed up on May 2nd. I knew exactly what it was.
Sure.
So some of them slaughter animals, some slaughter humans. I read a book by a guy who had been exposed to a lot of this when he was a child, and he wrote a book called Cannibalism, Blood Drinking, and High Adept Satanism. And you don't know what's true and what's not, but it's a book that if there's anyone that's interested in the subject, I highly encourage them to read it. I like the conclusions that are drawn and how to get beyond this, because see, a lot of our government officials are actually being blackmailed through pedophilia. From what I understand, people can sometimes find themselves at a party, then roofied. While they're passed out, photos are taken, children are involved in those photos, and Polaroids are left for them so that they know forever they're blackmailed. So
that would explain some of their policy decisions.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you think about, like, how could our government be any worse? Well, it's like it's being done on purpose. It is. It's to enslave us. And some of these people in government aren't like this. They don't want to be like this. But they're blackmailed. So you don't the rabbit hole is very, very complex. It seems to me that it's probably like a big spaghetti bowl to untangle. This swamp draining isn't anything I think that's going to happen in 2 minutes. But I do believe that our president is aware of it. And I like what I'm seeing happen.
Which is?
A lot of arrests for human trafficking, executive orders being signed about human trafficking, press conferences. There's more and more awareness. Now, the media is not covering it at all. They're just ignoring it.
Oh, well, there's nothing newsworthy there. Move along, folks.
Nothing newsworthy there, but oh my gosh, let's track down that, someone that made a meme with CNN's logo on it.
That's an awesome meme, by the way. The one where he's in like the wrestling match. I just saw it this morning and I thought, wow, whoever did that is pretty funny. Who would get so angry about that? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and what I'm beginning to see, and honestly, I because I was in this position as a dominatrix and was a student inside these dark arts, I was just exposed to things. And I often wonder, like, there's so many reasons I can see now why God wanted me there. Maybe I'm a messenger to talk with this about people or talk with it about people. I always talk to women about it, especially women I know who have children, because I don't know that they necessarily understand that they cannot ever let these children out of their sight. I saw a woman last night on Facebook, and she's a photographer, and she had the cutest little picture of her 2-year-old on one of those little plastic tractors. And he was naked, and it was from the back. And I saw that photo, and I'm like, someone's going to lift that photo off of her page, and her little boy's going to end up, in the dark net. Because the dark net has photos of all that stuff. And they just take them from innocent people's Facebook pages. I could just go on and on about it, Tatiana, but it is, I think, the number one issue that our country is facing right now, because if we don't protect our children, our nation stands for nothing.
Well, this seems to have been going on for a long time, though, and it's not just a U.S. issue. I again, when I went down the Pizzagate rabbit hole, it was very, very, very depressing.
You were physically sick, I bet, weren't you?
Of course. I mean, yeah, no, it was something that you never, like, at the same time, right? So it's disgusting and you don't want to read it. But at the same time, I felt like an obligation to discuss the subject with people, even though it's a horrible party conversation. I mean, no one wants to hear about this under any circumstances, but I felt as a member of humanity, there is some sort of a impetus to do some exploration. Now, I've seen some, the problem with the whole fake news thing is that now there's all these other alternative news sites that have varying standards of journalism, which, whatever. But I have seen some headlines saying that they've made a concentrated effort to make this into an issue for the Trump administration. Do you think that has been, would you support that statement? That you think that they're actually doing something? Because, saying, oh, yeah, well, they put away some pedophiles. Well, how do we know that they weren't going to put them away before? Maybe it's only now getting more promotion because people are like a hot topic.
Yeah, we know that the number of arrests is much higher than in previous years. So we know that it's escalating. And Craig Sawyer is the one that I really encourage everyone to follow. And also Liz Crokin, who is a journalist. She's a former Chicago Tribune journalist. She's basically been blackballed from journalism because she covers this. And Craig, who is a Navy SEAL with several, television shows. He started Vets for Child Rescue because they're literally pulling them out of dungeons. And also, Craig says he's seen the snuff films.
What's a snuff film? When they kill somebody on camera?
You're basically violating sometimes infants and then, killing them.
I don't even understand how people are capable of such a thing. And that's what I think makes it so difficult for regular people to even consider this a real problem, because I mean, even logistically, it doesn't seem like achievable. Like, how can you possibly do something so vile? And then it gets immediately to be something that's very overwhelming. And I think it's easier to just suppress it and say, oh, I don't know, I can't deal with that, you know? So what do you think that people can do besides, first and foremost, probably the most important thing is talk about it further?
Support the president because he's doing this. This is, if you're going to drain the swamp, you, first of all, okay, I would love to see a libertarian in office as president. I'm sorry, I haven't met a libertarian, including Ron Paul, who has the chutzpah to deal with this. That swamp and draining it, it's not for the meek and people that, you know, are afraid of being a bruiser, okay? It takes a bit of a bull to do this, and Trump carries that energy. If Trump can get this thing turned around in 8 years, he could create a really nice platform for libertarians and some alternative choices, you know, liberty choices, to come in and start taking these roles. But right now, the way it is, we've got to deal with the pedophilia because it's being used to blackmail everyone.
Right. So we can't make any progress on any of the other fronts until that's handled. I mean, I'll tell you, I'm not so impressed with some of the things that Trump has done. Other things I think are all right. And in general, I just like the shakeup. I like the action. I love making fun of fake news and all that stuff.
I know that's
people have some, you know, real reasons, like freedom-loving people have some real reasons to question some of Trump's moves. But in this case, credit where credit's due. And if, you know, the statistics are as you say they are, then that's progress. I'm concerned about some other things, especially the drug war, but it does seem like a good place to start.
The statistics are alarming. There's big spikes in missing children in the FBI files in Fairfax County, Virginia, which is right outside DC. And they are saying that about half or so of the files are missing pictures. So you have a child that's missing in an FBI file and no picture in an age where people have cell phones, cameras everywhere. This doesn't make any sense. This isn't 1900. You know, so there's that. And then also with Craig Sawyer, I keep going back to this Navy SEAL, but he started this PayPal account to raise money for the documentary he wants to produce to basically, you know, show people what's going on. And PayPal froze his account with $46,000 in it and won't give him his money.
Wow.
Also, as soon as Craig Sawyer came out about Pedogate, Twitter unverified him.
Yeah, I'm, you know, as enthusiastic as I am about social media in some ways, it's really gotten hijacked a lot. That's, you know, part of my enthusiasm for cryptocurrency. You know, crypto would solve his problems with PayPal, boom, like that. And also some of the solutions being built where it's a decentralized solution versus something where somebody doesn't like it, they push a lever and you're out of there. And we're seeing that a lot with a lot of the YouTubers and stuff. They're not able to make their money, but they're not even to even reach their own audiences, which I think is good because it prompts more innovation. It just takes a little bit more time. And I don't know, there seems to be, it's like a pressure cooker out there, right? You know, I'm not a religious person. I'm not saying that there is no God. I don't think that's true. I'm just agnostic. I think that's the expression. But it does seem like we're barreling down to this battle between good and evil that's maybe a little bit more intensified than at other times in history. Because it's really, you know, some people like to call it the death throes of the state, and which I'm hoping is the case, as I'm not a fan. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's the death throes of the state. It depends on how people handle it. Remember, this is a living theater, and we're writing the future by our actions, okay? So there's a lot of really good things going on. I'm very optimistic. I definitely feel we're in this age that they call the apocalypse. The apocalypse is a Greek word. It's not sinister. It doesn't mean the end of the world. It just means the revealing. So the veil is coming down. These ancient covens and satanic orders, they've always existed. They were just very, very hidden. I think that their thirst and lust for blood has become stronger in recent days. And there's also some science with it because, and there's mainstream news articles on this. I just read one today that, you know, in fact, the PayPal founder himself talked about, you know, this blood transfusion technology where you take the blood of someone young and you receive it as a transfusion and it makes you younger. And also the Queen Mother, she had these transfusions done and she lived to be 105. So I think they have this demand for the blood for those things. I also think because we can do organ transplants now, that some of the elites are, you know, doing they're
swapping things out.
Yeah, they're taking children for their organs. And you want the young ones because they're very, very healthy. So, but back to this optimism that I see, because I don't see this as entirely dark. Yes, I want these children rescued as quickly as possible, and that's not going to happen unless we get public attention on it pronto. We cannot hide our lights under a bushel. We've got to get out there and be beacons and tell people what's going on and face down the scrutiny. I had to come out and tell people about my incest. My therapist told me I had to do that if I was ever going to heal. I lost half my friends because they knew my abuser and believed him. He lied. He said it never happened. So I had lost half of my friends who thought I was crazy and just looking for attention and was lying. I've had all kinds of people say horrible things about me. Actually, just yesterday, people in the Libertarian Party basically saying, we don't want anything to do with you. You know, you believe in those Pizzagate conspiracy theories, etc. I'm sorry. I know they're true. And I know these things by part of like where I walked before, years ago, before any of this came into light because of things I was told. And so I think of these children who all they want is their mommy. Some are in cages, they're in dungeons, they're chained up, they're tied up, they're not allowed to leave, their freedom's taken from them, and they're being tortured. And I think about them and I'm like, and so I'm not going to say anything because, you know, some beta brat in the Libertarian Party is going to make fun of me on Facebook and tell me, you know, I'm a nutcase conspiracy theorist. No, I'm not going to do that because I know what I'm talking about is the truth. I know Craig Sawyer's account wouldn't be shut down if something wasn't going on. I know that Twitter wouldn't have removed his verified status if something wasn't going on. And the man is a Navy SEAL. All right? The man's a SEAL. You know, that means a little bit more to me than some beta boy in the Libertarian Party. Now, how this is all going to play out, I hope that if enough people come together and say, we're not having this, because that's how you end things. And I gave a talk in New York about cultural activism, and it's where I met Laura Loomer, who stage crashed. You know, the girl that, and you met her too. Remember Laura?
I mean, maybe. I don't know. I mean,
we met her in DC.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We met her at the party we went to in DC.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember her?
Oh, your friend that you went with.
Yeah.
Oh, of course, sure.
She's the girl that stage crashed. The assassination play. Do you remember that?
No, yeah. I had mixed feelings about that whole thing. I actually asked a question about it on Twitter.
A lot of people do. But if you were a Trump supporter who has experienced violence, as so many have, and you knew that, you know, posters were being put up with knives and people were being recruited to take knives to Trump rallies to attack Trump supporters with. And if there was constant threats of your president who's trying to take out these pedophiles, I think that it was very warranted. And especially because it happened just a few days after Representative Scalise was shot. And he was one of the main pedogay, child trafficking guys in Congress.
Wow.
I don't see any conspiracy there, though. That's the thing. I don't think that the guy that shot him had targeted him. I just think it was a random thing. He went up on that softball game. He wanted to make sure first that they were Republicans, and I just think he started shooting and hit.
But I thought guns are illegal in DC.
Well, guns are never illegal if you're a criminal. Or if they're illegal, it doesn't matter. But anyway, so that we had this attack, and then so I thought what Laura did was very appropriate. I mean, come on, she shut a play down for 2 minutes, and
I guess I just feel like I think that's a much larger thing to unpack, because the play has a right to exist to a certain point, but does it if it's getting government money? It's in a government park. There's a lot of different things that sort of came into play. Like, they have the right to put on their play. I guess she has a right to. I don't know. I was sort of I was confused about it. Jack Posobiec. He was I saw his video first, and that was what prompted a pretty good discussion about it. And that's what I want. I want a discussion instead of, this divide where people are not able to kind of have like a conversation about it. I felt that the play was awful, but then I sort of changed my opinion slightly on the form of protest and whether or not it was appropriate at that venue. But yeah, I mean, I thought the play was horrible. I thought it was really, because we have such a violent culture right now. Like, there's such a justification for the left's violence that's sort of propagated through the media and through celebrities and all this stuff, that it's very scary when it continues to sort of just be like, oh yeah, sure, you could. I mean, if they ever did something like that with Obama, they would have gotten crucified. And if somebody says, oh, well, they did do a play like that for Obama, I'm like, yeah, in Minneapolis. Sorry, guys, not the same thing as Trump Tower being like 3 blocks away from where you're having that. But anyway, we could go down that rabbit hole another time.
I kind of see both sides to it, but when I think of it in the bigger picture and how important it was to get this subject of political violence into the media, I applaud it, because she was able to literally do it in a matter of no time, like overnight. She put it in the media overnight. She was fearless. Now, what you may not realize is that a day or 2 before that, she had gone to the Fearless Girl bronze at Wall Street. You know that statue, right?
Oh, I don't even understand what that statue is. It's like a statue of a girl being like, I hate you, bull. Like, I don't even understand. Is it anti-capitalism? Like, what is it?
Well, I think it has something to do with, feminism and being anti-capitalist. I'm not 100% sure either, but Laura went down to put a burqa on it, because so she goes down to put a burqa on this and film it. Some guy tries to grab the burqa out of her hands, and she fights him off, and all these people are yelling at her. I mean, she's a conservative in New York City, and all these people are yelling at her. But as she was doing it and talking about how there is no feminism with ISIS.
Sure.
Okay, there's none. And as I'm watching her in this video do it, I'm like, oh my God, she's becoming that fearless girl. I sort of saw her adapt this kind of like this archetype energy from that statue. I could sort of see it on film. And the next thing I know, she's crashing the stage in New York. And actually, I mean, I love that girl to death, but I've never been so proud. Because to me, that represented the sort of thing that we would do, in the old Tea Party days. Although we never had any arrests, or actually, I would say that was technically breaking the law because it was trespassing, but it was our public property. And here I am in flyover country in Indiana, And my voice deserves to be heard there. They're forcing my tax dollars to pay for public art that I don't even approve of.
Right.
So in a way, Laura gave me, Melissa Hubbard in Indiana, a voice in New York that I wouldn't get otherwise. So
Interesting.
yeah, I just applaud her for it. And then within no time at all, she was doing InfoWars, she was doing Sean Hannity. She did a lot of shows. I can't even remember them all. There were so many. I don't think CNN interviewed her. Actually, I think they wanted to, and she told them no. She doesn't do fake news.
Oh, she doesn't do the Clinton News Network? Sorry.
Yeah. So I'm glad to hear, though, that you're fascinated with, fake news.
Oh, I think it's hilarious. I feel like Trump, look, when you first told me about the deplorable and some reservations because I was not, Trump this, Trump that. The only thing I liked about him was lock her up. I liked his stuff about 9/11. I thought this was hilarious, but I wasn't a big fan of some of his other things that he's done or said. So I was sort of neutral, but I really appreciated the opportunity to go and meet with people that initially seem very different from me, as sort of like a libertarian anarchist, but then discovering that there were a lot of freedom lovers there and a lot of people that, while we didn't agree on a lot of things, we did agree on some of them. I think that olive branch between those groups is important and good. I mean, I guess there's some problems in the alt-right. There are some, racists or whatever, but there's racists in all groups. So I don't know. I thought it was really cool to get to meet with different people and not hear about it only from the news. And to me, when Trump won, it was a big FU to the system. People who voted for Trump, some of them were xenophobic, whatever, but a lot of them were just saying anything is better than this cesspool that we have. And that sentiment, that evolution of perception that people have in American society, I think is really exciting because, what you said before, I think that it could potentially lead the way for the more libertarian-leaning candidates in the future. I'd love to see Rand Paul run. I mean, yeah, whatever. I wasn't too happy when he supported Mitt. He's never going to get a pass on that one. But I've been very impressed with Rand Paul, and I think hopefully we'll get a little bit more visibility over the next few years. I am concerned about the economy collapsing and then getting the blame thrown at Trump for it, which partially actually he might be responsible for. Although I did have Jeffrey Tucker, who's not a Trump fan, on the show saying that his tax plan was fantastic, but I don't know what happened with that. So, it's a mixed bag.
Jeffrey said that?
Jeffrey loved it. He says that if he was to get that, if Trump were to get that tax plan passed, it would basically make him the best president ever. And I was really shocked when I heard him say that because Jeffrey was very, very anti-Trump. I think he still is. But, credit where credit is due. So I think we'll have a lot of interesting things happen over the next few years. And hopefully, with voices like yours and mine and all the good people that are trying to actually take some action, hopefully we'll have some resolutions. We've gone a little bit over on the time, so I think we have to wrap. But, really interesting conversation. Please let me know if you're in New York again. Are you going to Freedom Fest this year?
I do not know. I still have, because I work a full-time job, so I mean I have some vacation time and things. I don't know. You should message me details about it. I have told Laura that I want to come to New York. I like October. Is it in October?
Well, Freedom Fest is in Las Vegas in just a few weeks.
Oh, it's in Vegas.
So these are separate things. And I'm not sure if I'll be in New York in October, but hopefully we'll get a chance to run into each other regardless. Yeah, where can people find your book and hear more about your story and maybe get some more information?
Well, I'm not really keeping up with the website right now, but I do keep up with a lot of social media. So I'm at Spank City Hall. At Spank City Hall on Gab, Facebook, and also Twitter. So I'm really easy to connect with. What I would like to encourage is libertarians to be open-minded about connecting with MAGA or Make America Great Again activists for this common ground. Because if we could drive out the Democrats, who I think we're all in agreement are the worst of the bunch, we could drive them out, we could have it being a libertarian and Republican, you know,
Battle.
Yeah, a battle every year, and that would be an improvement. What we have now.
I'm with you, although I don't like to, I don't like to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think sometimes Democrats have something good to say too. They're against the drug war. They've got some other things going on. So you know what? I think it's good to make bridges with both. I think we're probably going to make a lot more inroads with the right than the left, especially with this political climate. But
that is very anti-drug war. Roger Stone right now, he says he has a plan and he can get Trump to do it, and it's on the cannabis front.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to seeing that happen because I just saw his movie. It was pretty interesting on Netflix. Yeah, very cool stuff.
Good up. I could talk to you forever.
Oh, I know. Hopefully we'll get a chance to catch up. I'll message you on Facebook, and thank you very much for coming on the show. Again, thank you to Arvin for joining the show. There's going to be links to our guests below. Make sure you check out our sponsors: Bitcoin CPA, Crypto Compare, FreeRoss.org, Third Key Solutions, Sovereign Tech, Sex and Science Hour, Vaultoro. Buy my record, people. It's just like really cool and stuff. TatianaRose.com. Thank you very much, Melissa, for joining me and for sharing your story. We'll see you guys next week. Peace out.
Bye-bye.